Welcome back. In this video I'm going to show you how to use layer masks and why. I've created a second document called Delete Self. You don't have to do this, I'm only showing you this for the purposes of demonstration. Since I want to combine these images, I have to erase things in order to see what's behind them. So in order, for instance, to put this image of Vanessa beside herself, I'm erasing around this. And then I have to be really careful in here where it meets up with the other one, so that I have two Vanessas in the picture. But what I want you to see that happened here is that I erased this part of the picture. If I save this file right now, and because it's Friday, I want to come back tomorrow or Monday and fix this, I can't do it because the information's gone. There's nothing I can do about this except for opening up this original picture and copying it back in here and deleting this one. So here's why we do layer masks. A layer mask allows you to erase something without actually deleting it. It's a weird concept to understand, but if you had me in the wheel last year or the year before, you remember we cut the person's face in half using a layer mask. We're going to use that same procedure, and the way you do that is you go down here to the bottom of the screen of this palette, and remember, when you hover over something and pause for a moment, it'll tell you what the tool will do, and this one is to add a layer mask. Watch what happens right here when I add a layer mask. It adds another frame over here to the right. One thing I just noticed, this layer is not labeled, so I'm going to double click where it says layer 1 and call this sitting. So now I've got all my layers labeled. If these pictures are too small, come up to the Options menu, go down to Panel Options, and you can make these really large if you want to, so that you can actually see what's in the picture. Most of the time, these will actually look like this. So they're really tiny and hard to see. So once again, this little icon here at the top of this palette, you can see it's at the top of every palette, is the Options menu. I'm going to go all the way down here to Panel Options, and I'm going to select the largest one and click OK. And now I've got a preview and I can actually see which picture is which. So once again, I'm going to go down to this icon at the bottom, click on it. It's going to add a layer mask, and while I'm here I'm going to go ahead and do that to all of these. Not going to do it to this one because I want to leave this one alone. Hopefully you will learn from the mistake and do what I asked you to do. The mistake that we did was we didn't take a picture of nobody in the photo. What I should have done was taken a picture without anyone sitting here, so that if I erase anything from this layer, I've still got the background behind it. So hopefully you did that. So with all of these layers on, I'm going to click the top layer. Notice how this has a line around it? If I'm here and I erase, it's going to erase from the image. And you'll see right here, it's kind of hard to see. Let me turn these other layers off. It's kind of hard to see, but I've erased from the image here. If you do that accidentally, go up to Window, History, and then back it up one thing at a time. It even tells you what you did. Add layer mask and erase. I'm going to close this window. So whenever you erase, make sure that you're erasing from the layer mask, and you'll be able to tell like this. With the eraser selected, notice that the paint chip has the white in front. When the white paint chip is in front, it erases. As soon as I let go of the mouse, I'll show you what happens. Watch over here when I let go of the mouse. See that black part? It's like an imaginary hole cutting through this top layer so that you can see what's behind it, which is here. So I'm just going to keep doing this. And here's where the difference between the two is. Between just erasing from the picture and erasing from a layer mask, or adding to a layer mask, is what you're actually doing. If I make a mistake like that, it erased it from here. All I have to do is come over here and click this little bent arrow, and now when I erase, it actually will bring it back. So what you're going to do is, you're going to very carefully go through. Remember to erase. You have to have white in front. This is where this photo is not going to work, because I'm totally covering myself up here. So this image layer will probably not work. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, but I'm going to leave the layer there for now. This is the layer where they're pointing. Since there's already stuff erased from here, you can start to see what's behind, which is the next photo down, which is the two of us standing. So now it looks like we're standing behind ourselves. Again, I'm just erasing and erasing and erasing. Try and get as close as you can to the figures. Even though I've erased part of her head, I did it on the mask. So I can go back in and zoom in by hitting Command+. I can zoom in and see where I need to bring this part back. So I'm going to do two things right now, and here's where you're going to kind of go back and forth. I have the layer mask selected, but because I have a really large eraser and I want to get some detail in here, I want the eraser to be smaller. I can either go over here to where it says 300 and slide this scale back so that I have a smaller eraser, or what I like to do, because it's a keyboard shortcut, is the bracket key, which is right next to the letter P on your keyboard, enlarges and reduces whatever tool you've got. So I'm just tapping the left bracket. I'm going to put black in front by clicking the little angled arrow, and now I can begin to come back in here and bring back Vanessa's features in front of the other one. Again, you're going to have to go back and forth a little bit so that you can get it pretty close. But as long as you're erasing from the layer mask, this will be a lot easier. So I'm just going to go right to her shoulder, right to the side of her face, all around her hair here. Try and get it as close as you can. If you go over a little bit, it's not a big deal, because what you're going to do is you're just going to go back and forth by clicking the angled arrow, and then coming in very carefully and trying to get it as close as possible. I'm going to zoom in again. I'm holding the space bar down because when you're zoomed in and you want to see more things, rather than having to go down here and move this bar, if you hold the space bar down on the keyboard, it turns into a little hand, and now I can move the picture around. And it's not actually moving the picture, it's moving the view of the picture. Notice how you can see her lanyard right here. As long as I'm on the layer mask erasing, I can continue to erase or bring things back, and then I can get in really tight in here on her hair with a smaller brush. So again, you can get super detailed with this using a smaller brush or a larger brush. I like to start off with a really large brush and get most of the stuff out before I then go back in to some of the details. So again, I missed her shoulder here. I'm going to click the angled arrow tool and bring her shoulder back. It's kind of tricky in here because her shoulder is, the color of her jersey is the same, obviously. So I've got more stuff here that I have to delete. Just going to click the arrow tool and go back and forth until I have it as perfectly as I can. Smaller brush, using the bracket tool on the left, and get the details. Again, the nice thing about layer masks is that no matter how long it is in between when I work on the picture, I'll save it, Command 0, save the file, even though the side of my face is erased over here. I've done everything on the layer mask. So I'm going to quit this and upload it to Google Drive and work on it some more later. You're going to have a lot of fun with this, I'm just telling you. And I'll show you one other feature because it gets a little confusing, and this is where labeling your images comes in handy. Because when I want to see this picture back here, I need to erase from both this layer mask and this layer mask. This one I've got turned off, and you can tell it's turned off because the eyeball isn't showing. So this one's showing through, which is these two. I'm going to turn this one off for a moment. And you can see that even though I haven't erased from this picture, because I erased from that layer mask, got all this stuff back here that still needs to also be erased. So I'm going to enlarge my brush for just a second to show you what I'm talking about. Got this layer mask selected, white is in front, so now I can put these two characters in here. Make sure you get above and below the table so that you're not standing on air. And then just be very careful to erase everything except for what you want to keep. You can see up here, there's little bits and pieces up here in the top that I haven't erased, but it's okay because we set up the tripod, so we don't have to necessarily worry about that. But you can see your progress over here. There's a little piece here, but I'm not going to worry about it because it's way over here somewhere. Now here's where the tricky part comes in. Because this layer is in front of this bottom layer, now I have to erase also from here, so that you've got actually 3 people now in the picture that are all you. And the tricky part is going to be going back and forth from layer mask to layer mask, because obviously I don't want Vanessa's arm here in front of Vanessa's body here. So you kind of have to play around with it, going back and forth with the different tools. And it does get a little confusing, but this is where labeling your layers comes in handy. If it gets too confusing, just turn off one of the layers. So now I can work with these 2 layers. So that I can get a picture that looks like this. I'm going to mention one other keyboard shortcut before I close out on here. To switch these 2, if you hit the letter X, notice how it says switch foreground and background colors, and there's an X in there. If I want to switch back and forth between erasing and bringing back, I just tap the letter X on my keyboard, and now I can switch from taking away and adding to. So you're going to have to erase from both layers that are above this layer, and then just keep going back and forth until you have everything that you need in here, so that it makes sense when you zoom in and you can actually see I need to go back in and add stuff to this layer so that I can see more of my face, more of my head. And you can see it's already getting a little confusing. I'm not sure which one's erasing from right now and bringing back. So you may have to turn layers on and off to see which ones you're working on so that you can bring it all back or delete it. This picture is obviously not finished yet, but I'm going to stop here because the bell's going to ring in about a minute. That should definitely keep you occupied for a couple of days, if not a week.